China has many dynasties, from early tribal kingdoms to the intense battles of the Qin who unified all of China into one country, to the abundance, sheer size, and refined culture of the Tang dynasty, the high point of China's civilization, to the changing styles when China was ruled by foreigners during the Qing, China's last imperial dynasty. In part 1 of this series, we covered China's early history, mythical dynasties where humans and divine realms collided. Then we went through the age of philosophers, which include Confucius and the Taoist Lao Tzu. Then it was on to the Qin conquest, a time of constant war and these squiggly Chinese characters. We then have 400 years of relative stability for the Han dynasty, and then we are plunged back into battles again during the Three Kingdoms period, a time when we see many ingenious military strategies on the battlefield and on screen. Well, this video is part 2 of this series, and I'm going to take you through 4 of China's most famous dynasties, the Tang, Song, Ming, and Qing. We are going to look at how they are portrayed, the clothing, aesthetic styles, and the most famous stories to come out of each period. This is China Through the Ages, How to Recognize Each Dynasty, Part 2. So after the Three Kingdoms period, which is where we left off last time, we had the Jin dynasty, which united China again, but it's really not that well known or that distinctive. Then after that, we go into the Northern and Southern dynasties period called Nanbei Chao in Chinese. This lasted from the year 420 to 589 AD. The most famous story to be set in this period is the Ballad of Mulan, about a young woman who pretends to be a boy and stands in for her elderly father when the government order all households to send one man to go to war. It was made famous in the West with the Disney animated movie from the 90s, Mr. I'll make a man out of you, and then the more recent Disney live-action adaptation.
We're going to make men out of every single one of you.
To be honest, I don't know how she manages to fool everyone in the movie into thinking she's a man. Like, I can easily tell this is a girl. Oh, this guy knows too. Look, he looks like he wants to ask her out on a date. Now, if you live in the West, you may only know the Disney versions, but there are actually many Chinese-produced movies and TV shows about Mulan, like Mulan, Rise of a Warrior from 2009. It's a good adaptation starring Zhao Wei, who was also in the Red Cliff movies. The whole thing is on YouTube with English subtitles if you want to check it out. And again, I don't know how the other characters in the movie don't realize that she is a woman. To me, it's blindingly obvious. But anyway, I've got sidetracked and I was supposed to be starting from the Tang dynasty, so let's move on. But just remember, Northern and Southern dynasties, any Mulan movie or TV show that you see, it's set in that period. I'm going to skip the Sui dynasty because it was short-lived and it was overshadowed by the Tang dynasty. So scholars agree that the Tang dynasty was the golden age of Chinese civilization, with great emperors like Tang Taizong presiding over a multicultural kingdom from its capital, Chang'an. The imperial palace was at the north of the city, looking south over the emperor's subjects, with a grand avenue about 500 feet wide. Now, the Tang dynasty was a time of abundance, and we see that in movies that portray the period. There are always a lot of people around wearing bright colors with parasols, markets selling things. It actually reminds me a bit of Japan. And that's not a coincidence. Much of classical Japanese culture was influenced by the Tang dynasty. Think about your classic Japanese geisha. And then take a look at the women in the background of this shot in the C-drama Longest Day in Chang'an, or the lady on the bottom left of the screen in this shot. The makeup and dress are very similar. And yes, you can see the Chinese had an obsession with avoiding the sun at all costs with these parasols, just like they do today. They just hadn't invented the face kini yet. Female fashion was very developed in the Tang dynasty, with clothing in multiple bright colors and elaborate hairstyles and headdresses. It's a stark contrast to the similar styles in more mundane colors that we saw in earlier dynasties. As for makeup, during the Tang dynasty, it was very common for women to put some red makeup on their forehead. Not a dot like in India, this isn't Bollywood, but normally in the shape of a flower. This is called hua dian. You see it in ancient paintings, and there are a lot of different designs. And you can see this on screen in the movie House of Flying Daggers, which, if you didn't know, is set in the Tang dynasty. And actually, if you look at people's clothing styles in that movie as well, you get the same sense of abundance and luxury with multiple colors, styles, and golden headdresses. For men in the Tang dynasty, there was a very common type of headdress called the futou, which looked like this. And here it is in a painting from the Tang Dynasty. You would also often see the material hanging down to the left and right like a pair of floppy rabbit's ears. And you can see what that would have looked like from the front and then from the back on this guy. It's basically a turban with two ends tied at the back. You can also see in this TV show the poet Li Bai of the Tang Dynasty wearing a futou, where the rabbit's ears are not just cloth hanging down, but they're actually two pieces that have been shaped and they're kind of rigid. Li Bai was one of the many Tang Dynasty poets, and his story intersects with one of the most famous stories of the Tang Dynasty, that of Emperor Xuanzong and his favorite concubine, the beauty Yang Guifei. You can see her here with the Tang Dynasty Huadian forehead makeup. Yang Guifei is one of Chinese history's four great beauties, and the emperor was so in love with her that he neglected the affairs of state, and in the end, the story takes a tragic turn when his army forces the emperor to have Yang Guifei commit suicide, which she does, again wearing Tang Dynasty Huadian makeup. Another story that is set during the Tang Dynasty that numerous movies and TV shows have been made about is Journey to the West. And you see the Tang Emperor welcoming the Tang monk, Monkey King, and Pigsy home. The monk in Journey to the West is based on a real monk, Xuanzang, who did in fact go to India to get the Buddhist scriptures during the Tang Dynasty. There is a movie about the real-life monk too, although it doesn't feature a talking monkey. And finally, the Tang Dynasty period is the only period in Chinese history where China actually had a female ruler, Empress Wu Zetian. And I'm not talking about an empress dowager holding power because the emperor is too young or too weak. No, she did do that at the beginning, but then in 690 AD, she seized the throne and proclaimed the start of the Zhou dynasty. Not to be confused with the earlier Zhou before the Qin, but her Zhou lasted for 15 years until she was overthrown and the Tang dynasty just resumed as if it had never happened. There is a C-drama called The Empress of China starring Fan Bingbing that portrays her rise to power. And that one's all on YouTube if you want to check it out. So that is the Tang Dynasty, a time of abundance and a golden age of fashion and the arts, with enough gold stuff to make Donald Trump jealous. It's probably the dynasty that I have most to talk about in this video, but alas, let's move on to our next one. The Song Dynasty. Now, the feature of the Song Dynasty in history was that it was weaker militarily than the Tang, and this had a big influence over the culture. The Song Dynasty faced constant threat of attack from the north, so many of the classic stories that have come out of the Song Dynasty focus on the battles that were fought against the Liao people to try and save the dynasty. These Liao guys wear a lot of fur. I guess they didn't have Peter in the Song Dynasty. But anyway, no Song Dynasty story is more famous than the story of General Yue Fei. He was a Chinese hero known for his loyalty. First to his elderly mother, who he wanted to stay at home and look after, but then she tattooed Jin Zhong Bao Guo, with utmost loyalty served the country, on his back. And he realized that loyalty to the country was more important, so he was then incredibly loyal to the emperor and instrumental in campaigns to retake the north. Unfortunately, he was framed and arrested by a scheming official, and the Song Dynasty never managed to retake the territory they lost in the north, and it became the Southern Song Dynasty. Jingzhong Yue Fei is a great series to watch about Yue Fei, and that's also all available on YouTube. Another classic war story from the Song Dynasty that you should know about is that of the generals of the Yang family, or Yang Jiajiang. There is a collection of fictional novels and plays based on the lives of these real Song Dynasty historical figures, and it's also what the 2013 movie Saving General Yang is based on. And the Chinese classic novel Shui Hu Zhuan, Outlaws of the Marsh, is also set in the Song Dynasty. So you may know of the story of Wu Song getting drunk and then defeating a tiger with his bare hands. Well, that is in the Song Dynasty as well. In terms of clothing, the Song Dynasty toned it down a bit. The colors of people's clothing are more muted, at least in the TV shows about the period. The women's makeup is also much plainer and more natural looking. It's still beautiful, but it isn't the ridiculous opulence of the Tang Dynasty. This could also be an artistic decision by the directors of these TV shows to emphasize the differences between the two dynasties, but at least you know the impression generally given in movies is that the Tang was far more grand and luxurious than the Song, which is more chilled out. In Song times, men still wore the futou, although it wasn't worn by everyone. There was also a new type of futou where the material didn't hang down like rabbit's ears, but instead it formed a long horizontal line behind your head. And in case you think that's an exaggeration, here is a depiction of it from an actual Song Dynasty painting. Alright, let's now move on to our next dynasty, the Ming Dynasty. And guys, yes, I know I'm skipping the Yuan dynasty. There's probably some Mongolian keyboard warrior in his mom's basement in Ulaanbaatar writing a hate comment right now. But you know, this video is going to get very long if I do every single one. So, here are some scenes from a movie set in the Ming Dynasty, and what do you notice? Well, the guys are still wearing a type of futou, but now it has Mickey Mouse ears. Okay, they should be a little higher on the head for Mickey Mouse. Here's another shot of a Ming official, and this time they are less rounded, more oval. And this was a real thing from the Ming Dynasty. They also had another variation of the futou with Batman ears. Here's the first Ming emperor wearing it. And here it is in a TV show.
I'm Batman.
Oh, sorry, wrong clip. Here it is. This guy, yeah. Check it out. Batman ears. And here is a surviving Batman futou hat from the Ming Dynasty. You can see it was fabric over a wire frame. Oh, and apparently, according to that movie I just showed you a bit of, there was a Chinese version of Colonel Sanders in the Ming Dynasty too. The real-life Ming Dynasty was known for its blue and white Ming china, and you do see these pieces in the background in movies set in Ming times as well. The furniture industry also flourished in the Ming Dynasty, so you will see all these elaborate shelves and display tables that you can see in the background of these shots. Actually, the same style of furniture kept going into the Qing dynasty, and it is what we think of when we think of traditional Chinese furniture today. These are all Ming dynasty pieces. It's also during the Ming dynasty that we start to see Chinese adopting Western weapons like rifles and cannons. Okay, maybe it started in the Yuan, but we skipped that. So anyway, in the Ming dynasty movies, you do see Western weapons, and you also start to see a small number of Westerners in the movies as well.
这批货已经交付完成了，剩下的就是你的事情了。
Wow, that guy really aced that line in Chinese. It was also during the Ming Dynasty that the Forbidden City was built, and also the Taoist monastery on Wudang Mountain was expanded. The same architect was used for both. This is where the legendary Taoist immortal Zhang Sanfeng spent a lot of time during the Ming. So when you see movies about him, well, that is the Ming Dynasty. Now, during the Ming, the identity of people and the government is still traditionally Chinese, and the dress they wear is called Hanfu. Well, everyone except for the Chinese Colonel Sanders. So you'd better get ready for the big changes that are about to come. The Qing Dynasty. So the Qing dynasty starts with the defection of Ming general Wu Sangui and the Manchurian army marching through a gate in the Great Wall of China coming down from the north. They took over the whole country and founded the Qing dynasty, and the Qing made every man in China adopt their hairstyle or face execution. That's why in the spate of kung fu movies that were made about this time period, every guy in the movie has the exact same hairstyle, a shaved forehead and a long plait. And you know, it's kind of hard to find a non-kung fu movie about the Qing dynasty. I mean, when I did a search for movies about the Qing, I get Invincible Shaolin, The 36th Chamber of Shaolin, 5 Shaolin Masters. You see a theme here? But there are some, especially TV shows. Story of Yanxi Palace tells a story about the ladies of the imperial court of the Forbidden City, which, although built in the Ming dynasty, continued to be the seat of government throughout the Qing. The ladies of the imperial court now wore Manchu-style clothing that evolved as the Qing dynasty progressed. This is called qizhuang, as opposed to hanfu, which Chinese people wore for the preceding centuries. But a lot is known about this style of clothing, since there are still many surviving pieces in museums, since the Qing was the last dynasty. So actually movies showing Qing attire are probably more accurate than those showing earlier dynasties. And look, she's left the label on that gown. Maybe she's going to return it. You know, she's doing the thing where you buy the clothing, wear it for the emperor's banquet, and then return it the next day. And the more modern qipao dress, popular in the Republican period, evolved from Manchu clothing as well. So that's not really even ethnically Chinese either. You will see the emperor in TV shows about the Qing dynasty wearing these yellow imperial dragon robes, same as the ones worn in the portraits of the Qing emperors. And it's actually Qianlong in this TV show, and this is his portrait. Guards and soldiers in the Qing dynasty wore these red triangular hats. As we get further into the Qing dynasty, you will start to see more and more Westerners in Chinese movies, due to what was really happening at the time. Treaty ports being opened up and trade with Western nations. And these Westerners are normally evil and need to be dealt with. And they are tough, but their skills, of course, are no match for Chinese Kung Fu. And the Chinese, of course, show their moral superiority and choose not to kill them, even when they can win the fight easily with Chinese martial arts. So that is China's last dynasty, the Qing, as portrayed in TV shows and movies. And guys, if you want to see Qing dynasty Manchurian princesses on stage, or stories like Wu Song battling the tiger, or the loyalty of Yue Fei that we talked about in this video, then you have to check out Shenyun Performing Arts, the world's #1 Chinese classical dance company. They are just about to start their 2026 world tour in December and may be coming to a city near you. Tickets are already on sale for many locations, so click the link below to watch the trailer, and if you do go on to buy a ticket, use code LCN2025 for a waived booking fee on all US show dates. It's a personal favorite of mine, and I thoroughly recommend it. Alright guys, that is the video for today. Please leave your comments below. If you want to support us by becoming a member for $5 a month, hit that join button down below. It really helps us out, since there isn't as much money in making cultural videos on YouTube as there is in other niches. But if you don't want to do that, it's totally fine. You can still subscribe down below as well, which is free, and you'll never miss a video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.